What's up, everyone? Tonight, we're stepping away from the chaos of modern life and into something beautifully, wonderfully boring. We're talking about the forgotten Roman villas scattered across the ancient world, where life moved at the pace of sundials, and the biggest drama was whether the olive harvest would be early this year. So before you get comfortable, like and subscribe, but only if you truly enjoy what I do here. You're about to discover that the most peaceful moments in history weren't found in grand colosseums or imperial palaces, but in the quiet corners of domestic life where Romans lived, loved, and occasionally complained about their neighbors' roosters. Drop a comment with your city and current time. I love seeing where everyone's joining us from around the world. Now turn off the lights, maybe switch on a fan for that gentle background sound, and let's begin our journey tonight. You find yourself standing at the weathered stone entrance of Villa Serenitas, though that's not its real name. You've just dubbed it that because of the profound calm that seems to emanate from its crumbling walls. The sun is setting behind distant hills, painting the sky in shades of amber and rose that Romans would have recognized 2,000 years ago. The villa spreads before you like a dream half-remembered, its rooms and courtyards mapped out in foundations that grass now claims as its own. The entrance hall, what Romans called the atrium, opens up around you with the kind of space that makes you automatically lower your voice. You can almost hear the echo of sandaled feet on marble floors, though the marble has long since been claimed by time and weather. The impluvium, that's the rectangular pool in the center designed to catch rainwater, is now filled with wildflowers that sway gently in the evening breeze. Romans were practical people, and they knew that beauty and function didn't have to be mutually exclusive. You probably wouldn't survive this level of efficiency in your own home. As you move deeper into the villa, you notice how the rooms flow into each other with an organic grace that modern architects spend years trying to achieve. The Romans didn't just build houses. They created living spaces that breathed with their inhabitants. The cubiculum, or bedroom, that you're now standing in would have been a sanctuary of rest, its walls painted with frescoes of garden scenes and mythological figures. Historians still debate whether these painted gardens were meant to bring nature indoors or to create an idealized version of nature that was somehow more perfect than the real thing. The evening air carries the scent of wild rosemary and thyme, herbs that have been growing on this hillside since before the villa was built and will continue growing long after its last stones have crumbled. You settle onto what remains a stone bench, worn smooth by countless generations of occupants who once sat here to watch the sunset. The villa's inhabitants would have experienced this same golden hour, this same gentle transition from day to night, but they would have done so surrounded by the soft sounds of family life. Children playing in the peristyle garden, slaves preparing the evening meal, the gentle splash of fountains that provided both beauty and the soothing sound of moving water. Romans understood something we've forgotten. That luxury isn't about having the most expensive things, but about creating spaces that nurture the soul. This villa, even in its ruined state, demonstrates that principle beautifully. The rooms are sized for human comfort, not to impress visitors. The gardens are designed to be lived in, not just admired. Even the kitchen, which you can glimpse through a doorway, was positioned to catch the morning light and the cooling breezes of evening. Archaeological evidence suggests that Roman villas like this one were largely self-sufficient, producing their own food, wine, and textiles. It's a level of independence that would make modern homesteaders weep with envy. The villa wasn't just a home. It was an ecosystem, a carefully balanced world where every element served both practical and aesthetic purposes. You can almost imagine the satisfaction of the original owner, walking through these same rooms at sunset, knowing that everything needed for a good life was contained within these walls. The temperature drops as darkness approaches, and you pull your jacket closer around you. 2,000 years ago, a Roman family would have been gathering for the evening meal, oil lamps beginning to flicker to life throughout the villa. The paterfamilias might have been reviewing the day's accounts in his tablinum, the family office, while his wife supervised the final preparations for dinner. Children would have been called in from their play, their voices echoing through the corridors as they protested the end of another day. What strikes you most about this place is its profound ordinariness. This wasn't the palace of an emperor or the fortress of a general. This was simply a well-to-do family's home, designed for the gentle rhythms of domestic life. The Romans who lived here experienced the same universal human moments we all do. The satisfaction of a good meal, the pleasure of a garden in bloom, the comfort of familiar routines. They just did it all with considerably better architecture and a more sophisticated understanding of how physical spaces can nurture peace of mind. As you prepare to leave this first glimpse of villa life, you notice how the ruins seem to glow in the fading light. The stones hold the warmth of the day, releasing it slowly into the cooling air. Tomorrow, you'll return to explore more of this forgotten world. But for now, you're content to sit in the gathering darkness, surrounded by the whispers of a life lived beautifully, simply, and with a deep appreciation for the art of being peacefully, wonderfully bored. You wake not to the harsh buzz of an alarm clock, but to the gentle progression of natural light filtering through the villa's eastern windows. The Romans didn't need coffee to start their day. They had something far more civilized, the gradual awakening that comes when your body actually follows the sun's rhythm. You're lying on a lectus, a Roman bed that's surprisingly comfortable despite being essentially a wooden frame with rope supports and a mattress stuffed with wool. Modern sleep experts would probably approve, assuming they could get past the complete lack of memory foam. The villa stirs around you with the soft sounds of a household beginning its daily ritual. Through the thin walls, Romans prioritized community over privacy in ways that would horrify modern suburbanites. You can hear the gentle murmur of the morning salutatio. This is the daily greeting ceremony where clients and freedmen pay their respects to the paterfamilias, the head of the household. It's like a cross between a business meeting and a family reunion, conducted in hushed, respectful tones that wouldn't disturb the neighbors. The air carries the scent of burning olive oil from the villa's small shrine, where the family's household gods are receiving their morning offerings. Romans were remarkably practical about their spirituality. They figured it was better to keep the gods happy with small daily gestures than to risk divine displeasure over forgotten rituals. The Laras and Penates, guardian spirits of the home, were honored with wine, incense, and food offerings placed on a small altar called a lararium. Historians still debate whether Romans truly believed these spirits were literally present in their homes, or if the rituals were more about maintaining family traditions and social cohesion. You pad across the cool marble floor. Yes, even wealthy Romans had to deal with cold feet in the morning, toward the villa's main courtyard. The peristyle garden is already alive with activity, but it's the kind of gentle bustle that soothes rather than overwhelms. A slave tends to the herb garden, carefully watering basil and rosemary that will flavor today's meals. Another sweeps the covered walkway that surrounds the garden, his broom making soft, rhythmic sounds against the stone. The morning light transforms the villa's frescoed walls into something almost magical. Painted vines seem to sway in the gentle breeze, while foam marble columns create the illusion of a grander space than actually exists. Roman artists were masters of tranquil, painting architectural details that made small rooms feel expansive and windowless walls appear to open onto garden vistas. It's interior design psychology that modern decorators are still trying to perfect, though they usually charge considerably more than a Roman slave artist would have. In a villa's kitchen, the morning meal is being prepared with the kind of methodical care that comes from generations of practice. Romans didn't eat elaborate breakfasts. That's a modern invention that would have baffled them. Instead, they start the day with ientaculum, a light meal of bread, cheese, olives, and perhaps some fruit. The bread is baked fresh daily in the villa's own oven, a luxury that only the wealthy could afford. Most Romans bought their bread from commercial bakeries, But villa owners could afford the convenience of having their slaves handle the entire process from grain to table. The villa's water supply demonstrates Roman engineering at its most elegantly practical. Fresh water flows constantly through a network of lead pipes. Yes, lead, which explains a lot about later Roman history, from a spring higher up the hillside. The Romans understood that moving water stays cleaner than standing water, so the villa's fountains aren't just decorative. They're part of a sophisticated system that provides both beauty and sanitation. The gentle sound of flowing water is everywhere, creating a natural soundtrack that's more soothing than any modern white noise machine. As you settle into the morning routine, you notice how the villa's architecture encourages a particular pace of life. Rooms flow into each other without the harsh divisions that modern homes impose. The transition from private sleeping chambers to semi-public reception areas happens gradually, allowing inhabitants to adjust their social personas naturally. There are no long hallways demanding hurried movement, no stairs encouraging you to rush between floors. Everything is designed for the kind of measured, thoughtful progress that allows you to actually notice the world around you. The villa's mistress appears in the garden, her presence announced by the soft whisper of silk against stone. She's already dressed for the day in a stola, a long tunic that drapes elegantly without the constriction of modern fashion. Roman women of her class spent considerable time on their appearance, but their beauty routines were conducted at a pace that would seem almost meditative to us. Hair is arranged with the help of skilled slaves, makeup applied with pigments that would cost a fortune today, and jewelry selected not just for display, but for its supposed protective properties. The morning progresses with the kind of gentle purposefulness that modern life rarely allows. Each task has its proper time and place. Each person their understood role in the villa's daily rhythm. There's no rushing, no artificial urgency, no sense that time is something to be conquered rather than experienced. The Romans who lived here understood that true luxury isn't about having more things, but about having the time to properly appreciate the things you have. As the sun climbs higher, warming the villa's stones and releasing the scent of herbs from the garden, you realize that you're witnessing something that has been lost to our modern world. The art of beginning each day with intention, gratitude, and the kind of peaceful routine that nourishes both body and soul. The Romans may not have had smartphones or coffee machines, but they had something arguably more valuable: the understanding that how you start your day determines how you live your life. You drift into the villa's garden as the morning light strengthens and immediately understand why Romans considered horticulture to be both art and science. This isn't just a backyard with some flowers thrown around. This is a masterpiece of design that would make modern landscape architects weep with envy. The peristyle garden unfolds before you like a living manuscript. Each plant carefully chosen, not just for beauty, but for its practical benefits, spiritual significance, and ability to create harmony with its neighbors. The garden's layout follows principles that Roman agricultural writers like Columella documented with scientific precision. Main pathways divide the space into geometric sections, each bordered by low box hedges that release their earthy, green scent when you brush against them. The Romans understood that gardens should appeal to all the senses, not just sight. Your fingers trail along the glossy leaves of laurel trees, sacred to Apollo and practical for cooking, while the gentle splash of the central fountain provides a constant, soothing soundtrack that masks the less pleasant sounds of urban life beyond the villa walls. At the garden's heart stands a fountain that demonstrates Roman engineering at its most elegant. Water flows from a bronze spout shaped like a dolphin, cascading into a circular basin lined with blue-veined marble. The fountain isn't just decorative. It's the centerpiece of a sophisticated irrigation system that waters the entire garden through a network of buried clay pipes. Romans were remarkably practical about beauty. They figured if you're going to have something lovely, it might as well be useful too. You'd probably spend more on a single designer faucet than they invested in this entire water system. The herb garden occupies the sunniest corner, organized with the kind of methodical care that speaks to generations of accumulated wisdom. Rows of basil, rosemary, thyme, and sage create a living pharmacy where the boundary between food and medicine dissolves completely. Roman cooks and doctors often worked from the same plant knowledge, understanding that a properly seasoned meal was also a form of preventive health care. The scent of rosemary, symbolizing memory and fidelity, mingles with the sharper notes of mint and the honey-sweet fragrance of chamomile. What strikes you most about this garden is how it creates perfect microclimates for different activities. The eastern pergola, covered with grapevines that filter the morning light into dancing patterns, provides a cool spot for reading or quiet conversation. The southern exposure hosts the vegetable garden, where lettuce, onions, and leeks grow in neat rows that would satisfy any modern organic gardener. Historians still debate whether Roman gardens were primarily practical or aesthetic, but standing here, you realize that's a false distinction. The Romans simply refused to separate beauty from function. The villa's aviaries occupy a corner of the garden, housing not just decorative birds, but practical ones as well. Doves coo softly in their elaborate cages, destined for both religious ceremonies and the dinner table. Romans were unsentimental about their relationship with animals. They appreciated beauty and utility in equal measure. The sound of birdsong adds another layer to the garden's symphony, joining the splash of water and the gentle buzz of bees working among the flowering herbs. You settle onto a marble bench positioned to catch the villa's cook, a skilled slave named Marcus whose expertise has earned him considerable status within the household, orchestrates the morning's preparations with the confidence of someone who understands that great food requires both technical skill and intuitive timing. He needs bread dough with strong, rhythmic movements that have worn smooth grooves in the marblework surface. The dough itself is made from spelt and emmer wheat, ancient grains that would make modern health food enthusiasts weep with joy, assuming they could get past the complete lack of standardized measurements and temperature controls. Roman cooking relied heavily on garum, a fermented fish sauce that sounds absolutely disgusting until you taste it and realize it's basically the ancient equivalent of umami in a bottle. The kitchen's garum supply sits in large amphorae, its pungent aroma adding depth to everything from simple vegetable dishes to elaborate meat preparations. Modern food scientists have analyzed surviving garum samples and discovered that the Romans had accidentally created one of the most nutritionally complete seasonings in human history. They probably had no idea they were pioneering molecular gastronomy. They just knew it made everything taste better. The bread oven, built into the kitchen's rear wall, represents technology that hasn't been significantly improved upon in 2 millennia. The domed clay interior retains heat so efficiently that a single firing can bake bread, roast meat, and slow-cook stews throughout the day. You watch as Marcus slides loaves into the oven using a long wooden paddle, his movements precise and confident. The bread will emerge with a crust that crackles when you break it, and an interior so tender it practically dissolves on your tongue. You'd probably pay $15 for a single loaf of this quality at a modern artisanal bakery. The villa's herb and spice collection occupies an entire wall, organized in small clay jars that contain the treasures of the ancient world. Cinnamon from Ceylon, pepper from India, silphium from North Africa. These weren't just seasonings, they were luxury goods that cost more than most people's annual income. The Romans were the first global food culture, using trade networks that spanned 3 continents to bring exotic flavors to their tables. Historians still debate whether the Roman obsession with expensive spices was about taste, status, or the simple human desire to experience something new and wonderful. The kitchen's water supply demonstrates Roman practicality at its finest. Fresh water flows continuously through a series of lead pipes, providing both drinking water and a means of washing ingredients and utensils. The sink, yes, Romans had sinks, drains directly into the villa's sewage system, creating a level of sanitation that European kitchens wouldn't achieve again until the 19th century. Running water in the kitchen wasn't just convenient. It was revolutionary technology that freed cooks from the endless drudgery of hauling water from wells or rivers. As you observe the kitchen's morning rhythm, you notice how the work is divided according to skill and status. Marcus handles the complex preparations that require years of training, while younger slaves manage simpler tasks like washing vegetables and tending the fire. The kitchen operates as a teaching environment where culinary knowledge passes from master to apprentice through hands-on experience rather than written recipes. Roman cooking was an oral tradition, preserved in the muscle memory of skilled practitioners who could judge doneness by sound, seasoning by scent, and temperature by touch. The villa's storage areas reveal the sophisticated food preservation techniques that allowed Romans to eat well year-round. Olive oil stored in massive clay jars, wine aging in underground cellars, vegetables preserved in salt brine, meat cured with herbs and spices. The Romans had solved the fundamental problem of food security through a combination of technical innovation and accumulated wisdom. These weren't just survival techniques. They were the foundation of a cuisine that could support leisure, culture, and the kind of sophisticated social life that defined Roman civilization. The morning's menu reflects both seasonal availability and social expectations. Breakfast remains simple: bread, cheese, olives, perhaps some fruit, but preparations are already beginning for the day's main meal. You can see vegetables being chopped for a stew that will simmer slowly until evening, fish being cleaned for a dish that will showcase the cook's skill with delicate seasoning, and pastries being shaped for a dessert that will cap off the meal with elegant sweetness. What strikes you most about this kitchen is how it embodies the Roman understanding that food is culture made edible. Every technique, every recipe, every carefully maintained tradition represents the accumulated wisdom of generations who understood that sharing meals isn't just about nutrition. It's about creating the bonds that hold civilization together. The villa's kitchen isn't just a place where food is prepared. It's where community is created, one carefully crafted meal at a time. You drift toward the villa's lararium, that intimate shrine where the family's relationship with the divine unfolds through daily rituals so gentle they barely disturb the morning air. This isn't the grand spectacle of public religion. No thundering priests or elaborate ceremonies here. Instead, you're witnessing spirituality at its most personal, where household gods receive the kind of quiet attention that makes them feel less like distant deities and more like beloved family members who happen to live in a small wooden cabinet. The lararium occupies a niche in the villa's atrium wall, painted with frescoes that depict the Laras as dancing youths in short tunics, forever caught mid-step in their eternal celebration of domestic harmony. Below them, the solid, bearded figure of the genius, the protective spirit of the paterfamilias, stands in dignified repose, holding a cornucopia that promises abundance for the household. It's like having a personal board of directors for your family's well-being, except these board members are actually competent and genuinely care about your success. The morning offering is already underway, conducted by the villa's mistress with the kind of practiced reverence that speaks to decades of daily observance. She places a small portion of bread on the altar, pours a few drops of wine into a tiny bronze cup, and lights a pinch of frankincense that fills the immediate area with sweet, resinous smoke. The ritual takes perhaps 3 minutes from start to finish, but those 3 minutes anchor the entire day in gratitude, intention, and the comforting belief that the family is protected by forces that genuinely wish them well. Roman household religion was remarkably practical, focusing less on abstract theology and more on maintaining good relationships with the spirits who share their living space. The Laras were thought to be the deified spirits of deceased family members who had chosen to remain as guardians rather than departing for the underworld. The Penates protected the family's food stores and ensured that the household would never want for necessities. It's a form of spirituality that treats the divine as an extension of family obligation. You take care of the gods, and they take care of you, with the same kind of mutual dependence that characterizes any healthy relationship. Historians still debate whether ordinary Romans truly believed in the literal existence of these household spirits, or whether the rituals served primarily as social and psychological functions. Standing here, watching the quiet sincerity of the morning offering, you suspect that the question misses the point entirely. Belief and practice intertwine so completely that trying to separate them is like trying to determine whether breathing serves the lungs or the bloodstream. It's all one integrated system of sustaining life. The villa's children appear for their own part in the morning ritual, their small hands carefully guided as they offer flower petals to the household gods. Roman children learned religion the same way they learned language, through daily immersion rather than formal instruction. By the time they reached adulthood, the rhythms of household worship would be as natural as breathing, as automatic as greeting family members in the morning. You probably need a meditation app to achieve the same level of spiritual consistency that these children will develop simply by growing up in this environment. The genius of the Roman household shrine lies in its integration with daily life rather than its separation from it. The lararium isn't hidden away in a special room reserved for religious purposes. It's positioned in the villa's main social space, where family and visitors encounter it multiple times throughout the day. Religion doesn't require a special mindset or formal preparation. It simply flows alongside the ordinary business of living, available whenever someone needs a moment of connection with forces larger than themselves. The offerings themselves reflect the same practical spirituality that characterizes Roman culture generally. No exotic ingredients or expensive sacrifices required. The gods are perfectly content with bread from the family table, wine from the household stores, and incense that costs no more than a modern candle. It's democratized divinity, accessible to anyone who can spare a few minutes and a small portion of their daily bread. The message is clear. The divine doesn't demand poverty or extraordinary effort, just consistent attention and genuine respect. As you observe the family's interaction with their household shrine, you notice how the ritual creates a bubble of calm in the morning's gentle bustle. Slaves pause in their work as the mistress makes her offering. Children lower their voices automatically. Even the household cat seems to sense that something sacred is occurring. It's not forced reverence, but natural recognition that certain moments deserve special attention, that the transition from sleep to wakefulness benefits from acknowledgement of the mysterious forces that govern human flourishing. The incense smoke curls upward toward the villa's painted ceiling, carrying with it the family's unspoken hopes and concerns for the day ahead. Will the weather favor the olive harvest? Will the master's business dealings in town proceed smoothly? Will the children remain healthy? Will the household maintain its peaceful harmony? These aren't the grand theological questions that occupied Roman philosophers, but they're the practical concerns that actually determine whether life feels blessed or cursed, protected or vulnerable. The morning ritual concludes as quietly as it began, but its effects ripple through the rest of the day. Family members go about their activities with the subtle confidence that comes from knowing they've fulfilled their obligations to the protective powers that share their home. It's spiritual insurance, cosmic good manners, and family tradition all rolled into a 3-minute investment that pays dividends in peace of mind. The Romans understood something we've largely forgotten, that the divine is most powerfully present not in extraordinary moments, but in the faithful attention we pay to ordinary ones. You settle into the villa's library as the afternoon light slants through tall windows, creating perfect reading conditions that would make modern book lovers abandon their e-readers forever. The Bibliotheca represents the Roman understanding that true luxury isn't about having expensive things. It's about having the time and space to cultivate your mind while your body rests in surroundings that whisper, stay a while, think deeply, let your thoughts wander where they will. The room surrounds you with scrolls arranged in wooden cases called armaria, each one representing hours of careful copying by skilled scribes who understood that literature was worth preserving even if it meant spending months hunched over parchment with aching backs. Romans didn't have printing presses, so every book was essentially a handcrafted work of art. You'd probably pay more for a single authentic Roman scroll than the original owner paid for his entire library, assuming you could find one that hadn't crumbled into historical dust. The villa's master reclines on a curved reading couch called a sigma, his posture demonstrating the Roman conviction that intellectual pursuits should be physically comfortable. He's working his way through Virgil's Georgics, that epic poem about farming that somehow manages to make crop rotation sound like the stuff of heroic legend. Romans had a gift for finding profundity in the practical. They could write 500 lines of beautiful poetry about the proper care of grapevines and make it feel like essential wisdom for living a meaningful life. Across the room, the mistress of the house engages in correspondence, her stylus moving across a wax tablet with the fluid confidence of someone who learned to write before keyboards made penmanship obsolete. She's composing a letter to her sister in Gaul, sharing domestic news and literary recommendations with the kind of detail that makes you realize Roman women were every bit as intellectually curious as their male counterparts. The letter will travel hundreds of miles by foot and horseback, carrying personal thoughts across distances that would challenge modern postal services. The afternoon reading session represents more than individual leisure. It's a family activity that binds generations together through shared intellectual exploration. Children listen as their parents read aloud from Homer, learning both literary appreciation and proper pronunciation from voices they trust completely. Education wasn't something that happened in distant schools. It was woven into daily life through conversations, readings, and the casual discussions that arose when curious minds encountered interesting ideas. Historians still debate whether Roman literacy rates were higher than previously believed, but standing in this villa's library, surrounded by evidence of a culture that prioritized reading as both entertainment and enlightenment, you suspect that intellectual curiosity was more widespread than surviving records suggest. Books weren't just status symbols. They were tools for understanding everything from practical agriculture to abstract philosophy, from military strategy to love poetry. The villa's collection reflects the cosmopolitan nature of Roman intellectual life. Greek philosophy sits alongside Latin poetry. Historical chronicles neighbor technical manuals on architecture and engineering, and medical texts share shelf space with works on rhetoric and oratory. It's a reminder that Roman culture was fundamentally synthetic, drawing wisdom from conquered territories and absorbed civilizations to create something uniquely powerful and enduring. The reading furniture demonstrates Roman understanding of ergonomic centuries before the term existed. Reading couches are angled to reduce neck strain during long literary sessions. Writing tables are positioned to catch optimal light, and even the room's acoustics are designed to make reading aloud a pleasure rather than a chore. Everything supports the radical notion that learning should be physically comfortable, mentally stimulating, and socially enriching all at once. As afternoon progresses toward evening, the library becomes a gathering place for what Romans called literary conversation. Informal discussions where ideas bounce between participants like gentle tennis balls lobbed by intellectuals who understand that the best thoughts emerge through collaboration rather than competition. Tonight's topic centers on whether Cicero's letters represent genuine personal expression or carefully crafted public performance, a debate that would feel perfectly at home in a modern university seminar. The villa's younger generation participates in these conversations as apprentice intellectuals, their contributions welcomed even when their understanding remains incomplete. Roman education emphasized the development of rhetorical skills through practice rather than passive absorption. So children learned to think by actually thinking, to argue by engaging in gentle intellectual combat with parents who took their questions seriously. You'd probably need to pay private school tuition to provide your children with this level of engaged, personalized intellectual mentoring. The late afternoon light transforms the library into something approaching sacred space, where golden illumination makes even mundane text seem touched by divine inspiration. Dust motes dance in sunbeams that have been filtered through parchment and wisdom, creating an atmosphere that encourages both deep concentration and peaceful contemplation. This is where the villa's inhabitants retreat when the world feels too complex, too demanding, too insistent on immediate answers to questions that deserve careful consideration. What strikes you most about this Roman approach to intellectual life is how naturally it integrates with domestic routine. Reading isn't separate from living. It's part of the texture of daily existence, woven into conversations, correspondence, and the quiet moments when mind and body both need restoration. The library represents the Roman understanding that cultivation of the intellect isn't a luxury reserved for specialists, but a basic component of a life well lived, as essential as good food, comfortable shelter, and the company of people who challenge you to become your best self. As evening approaches and the reading light begins to fade, you realize you've witnessed something that modern life rarely provides: the luxury of unhurried intellectual exploration, conducted in surroundings that support both physical comfort and mental adventure, shared with people who understand that the best conversations arise when curiosity meets leisure in spaces designed for the patient cultivation of wisdom. You descend into the villa's underground chambers as twilight deepens above, following stone steps worn smooth by countless feet carrying provisions, treasures, and secrets into the earth's cool embrace. The temperature drops noticeably as you move below ground level, where the villa's true wealth lies hidden in chambers that represent both practical storage and mysterious sanctuary. Romans understood that what you keep hidden often matters more than what you display, and these cellars hold the accumulated abundance that makes gracious living possible. The wine cellar stretches before you like a cathedral dedicated to the god Bacchus, its vaulted ceiling disappearing into shadows that seem to whisper of vintages aging with the patience that only stone can teach. Amphora after amphora lines the walls, each one marked with cryptic symbols indicating vintage, vineyard, and the subtle characteristics that distinguish truly great wine from mere fermented grape juice. Some of these vessels contain wine that's been aging longer than most modern relationships last, developing complexities that would make contemporary sommeliers abandon their careers in despair. The air here carries the rich, earthy scent of wine slowly transforming in darkness, punctuated by notes of the herbs and spices used in various preservation techniques. Romans didn't just store wine, they aged it, blended it, and treated it as both art and science. The villa's wine master, a freedman whose palate commands respect throughout the region, tests his charges with the reverence of someone who understands that time and patience can transform simple grape juice into liquid poetry. Adjacent to the wine storage, enormous clay jars called dolia hold olive oil in quantities that would supply a modern restaurant for months. The oil ranges from the golden green first pressing, so precious it's reserved for special occasions and honored guests, to the more robust varieties used for cooking and lamp fuel. Romans consumed olive oil at rates that would horrify modern nutritionists, but they also lived in a world where physical labor and walking were the primary forms of transportation, so they probably needed every calorie they could get. The grain storage areas demonstrate Roman engineering at its most practical, with raised floors and carefully designed ventilation systems that keep wheat, barley, and spelt dry and free from the rats that would love nothing more than to feast on the villa's winter provisions. Massive wooden bins hold enough grain to feed the household through lean months, representing security in its most fundamental form. You realize that modern people, with their grocery stores and delivery apps, have no real understanding of what food security actually means or how precarious abundance can be. Deeper in the cellars, you discover the villa's most mysterious spaces, chambers that serve purposes historians still debate with the kind of passionate disagreement usually reserved for sports teams or political candidates. Some appear to be shrines to chthonic deities, underground gods who govern fertility, death, and the mysterious processes that transform seed into harvest, grape into wine, life into memory. Offerings of flowers and food suggest these spaces remain actively used, their religious significance undiminished by their hidden location. The villa's treasure room occupies the cellar's most secure corner, protected by locks that would challenge modern burglars and hidden behind a door disguised as part of the stone wall. Inside, you glimpse the accumulated wealth of generations, silver vessels, jewelry, coins, and precious objects that represent both financial security and family heritage. Romans were practical about wealth, understanding that true riches couldn't be stolen if they were properly hidden and carefully preserved. The cellar's temperature remains remarkably constant year-round, a natural climate control system that preserves everything from wine to documents to family heirlooms with efficiency that modern storage facilities struggle to match. The thick stone walls and underground location create an environment that changes slowly, if at all, insulating the villa's most precious possessions from the dramatic temperature swings that destroy so much of what humans try to preserve. As you explore these underground chambers, you begin to understand that the villa's true luxury lies not in its visible splendor, but in this hidden abundance. The beautiful rooms upstairs are made possible by the careful accumulation and preservation that happens down here, in spaces where function matters more than appearance, and where wealth takes the form of provisions, protection, and preparation for an uncertain future. The sound of your footsteps echoes differently in each chamber, creating an acoustic map of the underground spaces that reveals their size, contents, and purpose through the quality of sound they produce. It's like being inside a musical instrument where each room contributes its own note to the villa's hidden symphony. The Romans who built these spaces understood that architecture should appeal to all the senses, even in utilitarian areas where beauty seems secondary to function. What strikes you most about these cellars is how they embody the Roman understanding that true security comes from careful planning, patient accumulation, and the wisdom to prepare for both abundance and scarcity. The villa's inhabitants sleep peacefully in their beds above not just because their walls are strong and their doors are locked, but because they know that beneath their feet lies everything necessary to sustain gracious living through whatever challenges the future might bring. As you prepare to return to the world above, you realize that you've glimpsed the foundation upon which Roman civilization rested, not just the visible grandeur of public monuments and imperial palaces, but the hidden infrastructure of careful preparation, patient accumulation, and the quiet confidence that comes from knowing you've done everything possible to secure prosperity for yourself and the people you love. You slip into the villa's balneum as evening shadows lengthen, entering a world where water becomes therapy and bathing transforms from necessity into art form. The private bath complex unfolds before you like a liquid meditation center, where Romans understood something we've mostly forgotten, that the transition from day to evening deserves ritual, attention, and the kind of unhurried self-care that modern spas charge hundreds of dollars to approximate, though they rarely achieve this level of sophisticated relaxation. The caldarium's warm, humid air embraces you like a gentle hug from someone who actually knows how to give hugs properly. Steam rises from the heated pool in lazy spirals that catch the last rays of sunlight filtering through clear-story windows, creating an atmosphere that's part cathedral, part greenhouse, and entirely devoted to the radical notion that your body deserves to be pampered simply because it's carried you through another day of existence. The Romans figured out that guilt about self-care was counterproductive. They just built it into their daily routine and called it civilization. The hypocaust system beneath your feet represents engineering genius that wouldn't be matched again until central heating was reinvented over a millennium later. Hot air circulates through hollow tiles in the walls and floors, maintaining perfect temperature without the dry, artificial heat that modern systems produce. It's like being warmed by the earth itself, a gentle radiance that penetrates your bones and convinces your muscles to release tensions you didn't even know they were holding. The villa's bath attendant, a skilled slave whose knowledge of therapeutic massage would make modern spa workers abandon their careers in despair, prepares oils and strigils for the evening's ritual. Romans didn't just get clean, they were anointed, scraped, massaged, and generally treated like the valuable vessels they understood their bodies to be. The olive oil used for cleansing costs more per ounce than most people's monthly income, but Romans considered this an investment in health, not an extravagance. You move from the caldarium to the tepidarium, where the temperature moderates and your body begins the gradual adjustment that prevents the shock of sudden temperature changes. Romans understood that bathing shouldn't be rushed. It's a progression, a journey through carefully calibrated environments that guide your nervous system from the alertness of daily life toward the relaxation that prepares you for sleep. Modern showers accomplish cleaning in 5 minutes. Roman baths accomplish restoration in an hour. The frigidarium awaits with its cold plunge pool, shocking your system into the kind of alertness that paradoxically leads to deeper relaxation afterward. The sudden cold makes every nerve ending sing, followed by a rush of endorphins that would make modern athletes jealous of ancient Roman bathing practices. Historians still debate whether Romans actually enjoyed the cold plunge or simply endured it for health benefits. But judging by their commitment to daily bathing, they must have discovered something we're missing with our tepid, efficient showers. The walls surrounding you display frescoes of marine scenes. Dolphins playing in azure waters, sea nymphs floating among coral gardens, octopi dancing with disturbing enthusiasm. Roman artists understood that bathing should engage the imagination as well as the body, transporting bathers to mythical underwater realms where the ordinary rules of land-based existence no longer apply. It's visual therapy that makes the bathing experience feel like a brief vacation from reality. Conversation flows as gently as the warm water, with family members and invited guests sharing the kind of intimate discussions that modern life rarely accommodates. The bath creates a democratic space where social hierarchies relax along with physical tensions, where children listen to adult conversations and adults remember what it feels like to play. Topics range from family business to philosophical speculation, from local gossip to empire-wide news, all delivered in the hushed tones that hot water seems to encourage. The villa's mistress demonstrates the elaborate hair-washing ritual that turns cleansing into ceremony. Perfumed oils are massaged into her scalp with movements so methodical they approach meditation, followed by careful rinsing that preserves the natural oils Romans valued for healthy hair. She uses a mixture of saponins from soapwort plants and various herbal preparations that would make modern organic beauty enthusiasts weep with envy, assuming they could replicate formulas that died with the fall of the empire. As darkness falls outside, oil lamps begin to flicker throughout the bath complex, their gentle light reflecting off wet surfaces and creating an atmosphere that's simultaneously intimate and otherworldly. The sound of water moving through the villa's sophisticated plumbing system provides a constant, soothing background that masks any harsh noises from the world beyond the bath walls. It's acoustic design that recognizes sound as crucial to relaxation as temperature and lighting. The evening bath concludes with the application of aromatic oils that will scent the skin throughout the night. Lavender for relaxation, rose for beauty, mint for its cooling properties. Romans understood that fragrance affects mood and dreams, that the scents we carry into sleep influence the quality of our rest. You emerge from the bath not just clean, but transformed, your skin glowing with health and your mind clear to the day's accumulated static. What strikes you most about this Roman approach to bathing is how it treats self-care as both individual necessity and social activity. The bath isn't selfish indulgence, but communal investment in the health and happiness of everyone who shares the villa's life. It's democracy through warm water, civilization through careful attention to the needs of the human body, luxury defined not as excess, but as the simple recognition that everyone deserves to feel clean, comfortable, and cherished. You drift toward the villa's gynecium as the evening settles into its deeper rhythms, entering a world where women's hands create beauty through patience, skill, and the kind of meditative repetition that modern mindfulness apps try desperately to replicate, but never quite achieve. The textile workshop hums with quiet industry, where threads become fabric, fabric becomes clothing, and clothing becomes the tangible expression of a family's status, taste, and understanding that true luxury lies in things made with care rather than speed. The room glows with the warm light of oil lamps positioned precisely to illuminate delicate work without casting harsh shadows that strain the eyes. Roman women understood ergonomics centuries before the word existed, arranging their workspace to support hours of intricate needlework without the backaches and eye strain that would send modern office workers straight to physical therapy. The air carries the scent of wool recently dyed with precious murex shells, creating purple so deep and rich it seems to absorb light rather than reflect it. A color so expensive that wearing it was basically announcing you could afford to wrap yourself in liquid gold. The villa's mistress guides her daughters and trusted slaves through the evening's textile work, their hands moving with the practiced rhythm of generations who understood that clothing wasn't just protection from the elements, but a form of wearable art. They're working on a stola for the upcoming wedding of a neighbor's daughter, each stitch representing not just skill, but social investment in the intricate web of relationships that held Roman society together. You'd probably pay more for a machine-made dress at a modern department store than these women spend on materials that will create a garment lasting decades. The spinning wheel's gentle whir provides a hypnotic soundtrack as one of the younger women transforms wool into thread with movements so fluid they seem choreographed. Roman spinning techniques produced thread of remarkable consistency and strength, achieving through hand skill what modern factories accomplish through industrial precision. The wool itself comes from sheep raised on the villa's own lands, creating a supply chain so direct it would make contemporary locavore enthusiasts abandon their farmers' markets in despair. Nearby, an elderly slave demonstrates the ancient art of tablet weaving, creating intricate bands and borders that will trim the finished garments with geometric patterns that speak to Roman aesthetic sensibilities. Her gnarled fingers move the tablets with astonishing speed, muscle memory guiding complex manipulations that produce designs of mathematical precision. Historians still debate whether these geometric patterns held symbolic meaning or simply represented Roman appreciation for orderly beauty. But watching her work, you suspect the distinction might be irrelevant. Beauty and meaning intertwine so completely they become indistinguishable. The conversation flows as smoothly as the thread being spun, touching on topics that range from practical household management to philosophical questions about virtue, duty, and the proper role of women in society. Roman women of this class weren't confined to domestic concerns. They discussed literature, politics, and business with the kind of intellectual engagement that would challenge assumptions about ancient gender roles. The textile workshop becomes an informal academy where wisdom passes between generations through shared work and intimate discussion. The villa's dye garden contributes its treasures to tonight's projects. Madder root for rich reds, woad for deep blues, saffron for golden yellows that seem to capture sunlight and hold it in fiber form. Roman dyers were ancient chemists, understanding mordants, pH levels, and color theory through empirical experimentation that produced results modern textile artists struggle to replicate. The colors they achieved were so vivid and lasting that fragments of Roman textiles still retain their brilliance after 2 millennia buried in earth. As you observe the weaving process, you realize you're witnessing manufacturing as meditation, where the repetitive motions required to create fabric also create mental states conducive to contemplation, conversation, and the kind of creative problem-solving that emerges when hands are busy but minds are free to wander. The shuttle passes back and forth through the warp threads with metronomic regularity, each pass building both textile and community, cloth and connection. The evening's work includes embroidery that transforms simple fabric into storytelling medium, where needle and thread create narrative scenes from mythology, nature, and daily life. The villa's most skilled needlewoman works on a section depicting Diana hunting with her nymphs, each figure rendered with detail so precise it rivals the frescoes adorning the villa's walls. Roman embroidery wasn't just decoration. It was illustration, education, and artistic expression combined into wearable form. The workshop's organization reflects Roman understanding of efficiency and hierarchy, with the most experienced women handling the most complex tasks, while newcomers learn through observation and gradually increasing responsibility. Skills pass from master to apprentice through hands-on demonstration rather than written instruction, creating a knowledge base preserved in muscle memory and shared understanding rather than textbooks that could be lost or destroyed. What strikes you most about this textile workshop is how it embodies the Roman genius for combining beauty with utility, individual expression with communal purpose, ancient tradition with innovation. Every garment created here will serve multiple functions: protection, decoration, social signaling, and artistic expression. While the process of creation serves equally important functions in building relationships, preserving knowledge, and providing the kind of meditative satisfaction that comes from making beautiful things with your own hands. As the evening deepens and the oil lamps cast dancing shadows on the walls, you realize you've witnessed something that modern life has largely lost: the integration of work and art, necessity and beauty, individual skill, and community cooperation that characterize the best of Roman domestic life, where even the most practical activities became opportunities for creating something worthy of preservation and admiration. You step into the villa's agricultural heart as dawn breaks over rolling hills that stretch toward horizons painted in shades of gold and green, where the ancient rhythm of farming life unfolds with the kind of timeless certainty that makes modern anxieties seem like temporary inconveniences. The fundus, that's the fancy Roman term for the villa's farmland, spreads before you like a living textbook on sustainable agriculture, where every field, every grove, every carefully tended vineyard represents generations of accumulated wisdom about coaxing abundance from earth without destroying the very soil that sustains life. The olive groves occupy the villa's southern slopes, their silvery leaves whispering secrets to the morning breeze that carries the scent of Mediterranean herbs and the promise of liquid gold locked within each small, hard fruit. These trees are older than empires, their gnarled trunks bearing witness to centuries of careful cultivation that will continue long after the last stone of the villa has crumbled into romantic ruin. Romans understood that olive trees were investments in immortality. Plant one today, and your great-great-grandchildren will thank you while they're counting their profits from oil sales. The vineyard manager, a weathered freedman whose knowledge of viticulture would make modern wine experts weep with envy, guides you through rows of vines that produce wine so superior it commands premium prices in markets from Gaul to Egypt. His calloused hands cradle grape clusters with the tenderness of someone who understands that wine begins not in fermentation vats, but in the patient attention paid to each vine throughout the growing season. The Romans pioneered agricultural techniques that wouldn't be rediscovered until the Renaissance, assuming they've been properly rediscovered even now. The grain fields undulate like a golden sea, wheat and barley rippling in waves that create their own weather systems of beauty and abundance. Roman agricultural writers like Columella documented farming techniques with scientific precision that modern agricultural colleges still study, understanding that successful farming required both practical knowledge and theoretical understanding. The villa's grain harvest will feed the household for an entire year while providing surplus for profitable trade. It's food security and economic strategy growing side by side in the same fertile soil. The farm's workforce moves through the fields with choreographed efficiency that speaks to years of experience and carefully maintains social relationships. Free laborers work alongside slaves and freedmen in arrangements that historians still debate, questioning whether Roman agricultural labor was primarily exploitative or represented a complex system of mutual dependence that provided security for workers and productivity for landowners. Standing here, watching the gentle cooperation required for successful farming, you suspect the reality was probably more nuanced than modern political categories can easily accommodate. The villa's kitchen garden occupies prime real estate close to the house, where herbs, vegetables, and medicinal plants grow in raised beds that demonstrate Roman understanding of drainage, soil composition, and companion planting. Basil grows alongside tomatoes. Wait, no, Romans didn't have tomatoes yet. Basil grows alongside whatever vegetables Romans actually ate, which was apparently a lot more variety than surviving recipes suggest. The garden provides daily ingredients for the villa's kitchen while serving as a living pharmacy where every plant serves multiple purposes. The villa's livestock wander through carefully managed pastures where sheep provide wool, goats provide milk and cheese, and chickens provide eggs and endless entertainment through their apparently universal commitment to dramatic behavior. Roman animal husbandry focused on breeds that were hardy, productive, and capable of thriving on local resources rather than imported feed. It's sustainable agriculture practiced by people who understood that working with natural systems was more effective than trying to dominate them. The seasonal rhythms of farm life provide a calendar more meaningful than any modern scheduling system, where activities flow according to weather patterns, soil conditions, and the mysterious timing that governs all growing things. Spring brings planting and the excitement of new growth. Summer demands constant attention to irrigation and pest control. Autumn celebrates harvest and the satisfaction of another year's successful abundance. Winter allows rest and planning for the cycle that will begin again with inevitable certainty. The villa's irrigation system demonstrates Roman engineering applied to agricultural needs, channeling water from mountain springs through carefully graded channels that deliver moisture where it's needed while preventing the waterlogging that destroys crops and soil alike. Water rights and irrigation management were serious business in the Roman world, governed by laws and customs that recognize water as both precious resource and potential source of conflict between neighboring landowners. As you walk through the villa's diverse agricultural landscape, you begin to understand that this isn't just farming. It's ecosystem management practiced by people who understood that long-term prosperity required maintaining the health of soil, water, plants, animals, and human communities in careful balance. The Romans who managed this land thought in terms of generations rather than quarterly profits, understanding that sustainable abundance required patience, knowledge, and respect for natural limits. The morning sun climbs higher, warming your face and releasing the complex perfume of a landscape where human intelligence has partnered with natural systems to create something more beautiful and productive than either could achieve alone. You realize you're standing in a place where the fundamental challenge of human civilization, how to live well without destroying the conditions that make life possible, has been successfully met through knowledge, planning, and the kind of long-term thinking that modern society desperately needs to rediscover. You settle into the villa's triclinium as evening arrives with the gentle ceremony that transforms day into night, where the Romans have elevated dining from mere sustenance into a carefully orchestrated performance that engages all your senses while proving that civilization's highest achievement might just be learning how to eat really well while lying down. The dining couches surround low tables laden with delicacies that would make modern foodies abandon their Instagram accounts in despair, realizing they've been photographing mere amateur hour compared to this level of culinary sophistication. The evening's entertainment begins with the soft plucking of a lyre, its strings producing melodies that seem to have been composed specifically for the golden hour when lamplight begins to compete with the last rays of sunlight filtering through painted windows. A skilled musician, probably an educated slave whose musical training cost more than most people's houses, coaxes from the instrument sounds that transform the dining room into something approaching sacred space. Romans understood that music wasn't background noise, but an essential ingredient in creating the perfect atmosphere for both digestion and conversation. The villa's master demonstrates his skill at a board game called la tranquil, essentially ancient chess with more attitude, moving carved ivory pieces across a board with the concentrated intensity of someone who takes tactical thinking seriously even during leisure hours. His opponent, a visiting neighbor whose own villa produces wine that commands premium prices throughout the province, matches him move for strategic move while maintaining the kind of witty banter that suggests Romans invented the art of trash talk centuries before modern athletes claimed credit for the innovation. Children participate in the evening's games with the kind of supervised freedom that allows them to learn adult skills while remaining appropriately childlike. They're playing with knuckle bones, the ancient equivalent of dice, except using actual animal bones because Romans were practical about their entertainment supplies, developing mathematical skills and strategic thinking through games that adults also enjoyed. Roman education happened everywhere, not just in formal school settings, because Romans figured that learning should be as natural as breathing and considerably more fun than most modern curricula manage to achieve. The musical entertainment expands to include a flute that produces haunting melodies reminiscent of wind moving through olive groves, its notes floating through the villa's rooms like auditory incense that sanctifies the transition from day to evening. Roman musicians were often Greek slaves whose cultural heritage included musical traditions that Romans adapted, and preserved with the kind of cultural synthesis that created something uniquely Roman while honoring its diverse origins. Historians still debate whether Roman culture represented cultural appropriation or cultural appreciation. But listening to this music, you suspect the musicians themselves were probably more concerned with creating beauty than satisfying modern academic categories. The evening's games include tessera, Roman dice games that involved more strategy than modern casino offerings while maintaining the excitement of controlled risk-taking. The dice themselves are works of art, carved from bone or ivory with precision that ensures fair play, while providing tactile pleasure that plastic casino dice will never match. Romans gambled with the same sophisticated understanding they brought to everything else, treating chance as both entertainment and philosophical opportunity to contemplate fate, fortune, and the mysterious forces that govern human destiny. As darkness deepens outside, the villa's interior transforms into a world illuminated entirely by oil lamps whose flickering flames create an atmosphere that's simultaneously intimate and mysterious. The dancing light makes frescoed figures seem to move on the walls, while bronze oil lamps cast shifting shadows that transform familiar spaces into something approaching magical realism. Roman evenings were naturally cinematic, where artificial light created dramatic effects that modern electric illumination, for all its convenience, rarely achieves. The conversation flows as smoothly as the wine being served in cups that demonstrate Roman metalworking at its finest. Silver vessels, so thin they seem to glow from within, while remaining surprisingly practical for daily use. Topics range from local gossip to imperial politics, from philosophical speculation to detailed discussions of agricultural techniques, all delivered with the kind of intellectual engagement that suggests Romans treated dinner conversation as both entertainment and education. You realize that modern small talk would bore these people into catatonic states. The evening's musical performances include singing that showcases both individual talent and group harmony, with family members and guests contributing to songs that celebrate everything from seasonal changes to successful harvests to the simple pleasure of sharing food and friendship with people whose company you genuinely enjoy. Roman domestic music wasn't concert performance, but communal expression, where participation mattered more than technical perfection, and where even mediocre voices contributed to collective beauty. The games conclude with storytelling that transforms the triclinium into a theater where words create worlds more vivid than any stage production. The villa's master recounts adventures from his travels in Gaul. His wife shares tales passed down through generations of family tradition, and guests contribute stories that blend personal experience with mythological reference in ways that make ordinary events seem touched by divine significance. What strikes you most about this Roman evening entertainment is how naturally it integrates social bonding, intellectual stimulation, artistic appreciation, and gentle competition into a seamless experience that nourishes both individual enjoyment and community cohesion. The villa's inhabitants aren't consuming entertainment. They're creating it together, building relationships through shared participation in activities that challenge their minds while delighting their senses and strengthening the social bonds that make gracious living possible. You move through the villa's architectural spaces as moonlight transforms familiar rooms into something approaching sacred geometry, where every doorway, column, and carefully planned sightline reveals the Roman genius for creating harmony between human needs and divine proportion. The villa unfolds around you like a three-dimensional poem written in stone, marble, and the kind of spatial intelligence that understands architecture isn't just about shelter. It's about shaping the human soul through the subtle manipulation of light, space, and the mysterious ways that built environments influence how we think, feel, and dream. The atrium rises above you with the kind of calculated grandeur that makes you automatically stand straighter. Its impluvium reflecting moonlight in patterns that dance across painted walls depicting gardens more perfect than any earthly paradise. Romans understood that the entrance to a home should prepare visitors for what lies beyond, creating a psychological transition from the chaos of public life to the ordered beauty of domestic sanctuary. The space is sized to impress without overwhelming, designed to welcome without intimidating, proportioned to suggest prosperity without flaunting wealth in ways that might inspire envy or resentment. The villa's circulation patterns demonstrate Roman understanding of how people actually move through buildings, creating pathways that guide foot traffic while preserving privacy for activities that require solitude or intimacy. Public spaces flow seamlessly into semi-private areas, which gradually transition into fully private chambers, allowing inhabitants to control their level of social engagement without awkward architectural barriers. It's behavioral psychology built in stone, where the building itself teaches appropriate social conduct through spatial cues so subtle you follow them without conscious awareness. The peristyle garden serves as the villa's beating heart, a space where interior and exterior merge through covered walkways that protect from weather while maintaining connection to sky, air, and the seasonal changes that mark time's passage. The colonnade creates rhythm through repetition, column, space, in patterns that satisfy some deep human need for mathematical order made visible. You realize that Romans were essentially ancient feng shui masters, except they called it architectural harmony and backed it up with engineering that has survived 2 millennia of earthquakes, wars, and urban planning disasters. The villa's sacred spaces integrate seamlessly with domestic areas, reflecting the Roman understanding that religion shouldn't be separated from daily life, but woven into the fabric of ordinary activities. The lararium occupies a niche that's visible from multiple rooms, ensuring that household gods remain present in peripheral vision even during secular activities. Private shrines in bedrooms and gardens create opportunities for individual prayer and meditation without requiring formal religious architecture that might dominate the home's peaceful atmosphere. The proportional relationships between rooms follow mathematical principles that Greek architects documented and Romans perfected, creating spatial harmonies that please the eye and calm the mind through geometric relationships, too complex for conscious analysis, but simple enough for intuitive appreciation. Doorways align to create vista lines that draw the eye through multiple spaces, making small areas feel expansive while large rooms remain intimate. Historians still debate whether Romans consciously applied mathematical theories to domestic architecture or simply inherited proportional instincts that happened to produce mathematically satisfying results. The villa's lighting design demonstrates sophisticated understanding of how natural illumination changes throughout the day and seasons, with windows positioned to capture morning light in bedrooms, afternoon sun in work areas, and evening glow in social spaces. Clear-story windows provide illumination without compromising privacy, while strategically placed openings create cross breezes that provide natural air conditioning centuries before anyone understood the physics of thermodynamics. It's environmental engineering disguised as architectural beauty. The materials used throughout the villa create a sensory symphony where marble feels cool beneath bare feet, painted plaster provides visual warmth, and wooden surfaces offer tactile comfort that balances the stone's austere elegance. Romans understood that buildings should appeal to all the senses, not just sight, creating environments where every surface contributes to overall atmospheric effects. The acoustic properties of different rooms, hard surfaces for clarity in public spaces, soft materials for intimacy in private areas, demonstrate attention to sonic architecture that modern builders rarely achieve. As you trace the villa's spatial relationships, you begin to understand that Roman domestic architecture represented a philosophy of living made manifest in built form. Every room serves multiple functions. Every transition creates opportunities for chance encounters or private reflection. Every sight line connects activities while preserving individual autonomy. The villa doesn't just house a family. It shapes family life through architectural decisions that encourage certain behaviors while discouraging others. The integration between indoor and outdoor spaces creates a living environment that breathes with natural rhythms, where seasonal changes penetrate even the most interior rooms through carefully planned connections to gardens, courtyards, and sky. Romans refused to accept the artificial separation between natural and built environments that characterizes modern architecture, understanding that human well-being requires constant connection to the larger world beyond human construction. What strikes you most about this Roman architectural achievement is how it manages to be simultaneously practical and poetic, functional and beautiful, innovative and traditional. The villa solves every practical problem a family might encounter while creating spaces so harmonious they seem to have grown from the landscape rather than being imposed upon it. You realize you're standing inside a built philosophy that understands architecture as the art of creating perfect settings for imperfect human lives. You venture beyond the villa's walls as morning mist rises from distant fields, following well-worn paths that connect this household to its neighbors in a web of relationships so intricate it would make modern social networks look like amateur hour. The Roman countryside spreads before you like a living map of interdependence, where isolated villas are actually nodes in a sophisticated network of mutual support, shared resources, and the kind of neighborly cooperation that makes gracious living possible even in an age without emergency services or 24-hour delivery. The neighboring Villa Concordia sits elegantly on the next hillside, its red tile roofs glowing in the morning light like a beacon of architectural confidence. The two households maintain the kind of relationship that modern suburbanites can only dream about, close enough for genuine friendship, distant enough to avoid the irritations that come from actually seeing your neighbors in their bathrobes every morning. Romans understood that good fences make good neighbors, but they also knew that good neighbors make life worth living, especially when those neighbors happen to produce excellent wine and throw legendary dinner parties. The path between villas winds through olive groves and vineyards that blur property lines in ways that speak to generations of cooperative land management. Boundary markers exist, of course. Romans were practical about property rights, but they're placed with the understanding that neighbors who share water sources, seasonal labor, and occasional marriage alliances need flexibility more than rigid demarcation. You'd probably need a team of lawyers and a GPS system to navigate the kind of complex interdependence that these villa owners manage through handshake agreements and inherited trust. Today marks the celebration of a neighbor's daughter reaching marriageable age, an event that transforms the entire district into a festival of community investment in the next generation's prosperity. Villa households contribute everything from musicians and entertainers to elaborate food preparations and precious gifts. Understanding that celebrating one family's joy strengthens the social fabric that protects everyone during difficult times. Its insurance policy and party planning rolled into one delightfully civilized package. The visiting delegations arrive throughout the morning, each villa's contribution reflecting both their particular specialties and their relationship to the celebrating family. Villa Rustica brings their famous garum and preserved fish delicacies. Villa Olivetum contributes oil so pure it seems to glow with captured sunlight, and Villa Venia arrives with amphorae of wine that will make this celebration memorable for all the right reasons. Roman potluck dinners operated on a scale that would exhaust modern event planners, while somehow remaining intimate and personal. The exchange of gifts reveals the complex calculus of Roman social relationships, where presents serve multiple functions as tokens of affection, indicators of status, investments in future cooperation, and subtle negotiations of relative standing within the community hierarchy. A particularly beautiful silver bowl might express genuine fondness, while also signaling the giver's prosperity and taste, creating social capital that can be drawn upon during future negotiations or emergencies. Historians still debate whether Roman gift-giving was primarily economic or emotional, but watching these exchanges, you realize that's another false distinction. Romans simply refused to separate affection from practical considerations. The celebration itself unfolds in the neighbor's peristyle garden, transformed for the occasion into an outdoor theater where multiple generations gather to mark another family's transition into adulthood. Children run between the adult conversations with a kind of supervised freedom that allows them to observe social rituals while remaining appropriately childlike, learning through participation how community celebrations create and reinforce the bonds that make isolated rural life feel connected to something larger than individual household concerns. The Roman villa system wasn't just about agricultural efficiency or architectural beauty. It was about creating communities where individual prosperity and collective well-being reinforced each other in sustainable cycles that could survive political upheavals, economic disruptions, and the inevitable challenges that make life interesting whether you live in ancient Rome or modern suburbia. As evening approaches and the celebration reaches its gentle crescendo, you realize you've witnessed something that modern life has largely lost. The art of creating community through shared celebration, mutual support, and the understanding that true wealth consists not in individual accumulation, but in the relationships that make life worth living. You slip into the villa's seasonal rhythms as autumn arrives with the kind of golden light that makes even practical Romans wax poetic about the divine timing that governs all growing things, where the passage of time becomes something to celebrate rather than simply endure. The festival of Rusticalia transforms the household into a living theater where ancient customs blend with family traditions to create celebrations that honor both the gods who control harvests and the human community that depends on their continued favor. Romans understood that gratitude isn't just good manners. It's essential insurance against cosmic indifference. The villa's preparation for the autumn festival begins weeks in advance, with household members and slaves collaborating on decorations that transform practical spaces into something approaching sacred theater. Garlands of grapevines heavy with purple fruit drape the peristyle columns, while sheaves of wheat create golden backdrops that make even ordinary conversations feel touched by divine abundance. The Romans had a gift for making the everyday feel special without losing track of the practical considerations that actually make celebrations possible. The altar in the villa's main courtyard receives special attention. Draped with cloth dyed the deep red of wine and decorated with fruits, grains, and flowers that represent the year's successful harvest. The paterfamilias will soon lead the household in offering prayers and sacrifices that thank the gods for their generosity while respectfully requesting continued favor for the coming year. Roman religious practice was fundamentally transactional. You give to the gods, they give to you, and everyone stays happy with the arrangement. The villa's children participate in harvest games that teach agricultural skills, while providing entertainment that keeps them occupied during the adults' more serious ritual obligations. They compete in grape-stomping contests that would make modern health inspectors faint, but which Romans considered essential training for understanding how wine actually gets made. The purple stains on their feet will mark them as participants in ancient traditions that connect this celebration to countless others stretching back through generations of careful cultivation and grateful celebration. The feast preparation demonstrates Roman cooking at its most elaborate, with multiple courses planned to showcase the villa's agricultural abundance, while honoring the gods who made such prosperity possible. The kitchen bustles with activity that would challenge modern catering operations, yet somehow maintains the relaxed efficiency that comes from years of experience preparing celebratory meals that must satisfy both human appetites and divine expectations. Historians still debate whether elaborate religious feasts were primarily about honoring gods or impressing neighbors. But standing in this fragrant kitchen, you suspect the Romans would have found such distinctions pointlessly academic. The evening's entertainment begins with musical performances that blend sacred hymns with secular celebrations, creating soundscapes that honor both religious obligation and human joy in ways that make the distinction between worship and party planning seem artificially rigid. The villa's musicians, a mix of family members and talented slaves, create harmonies that transform the courtyard into something approaching celestial space, where human voices join with divine favor to create beauty that satisfies both earthly and heavenly audiences. As darkness falls, the oil lamps throughout the villa create atmospheric lighting that makes familiar spaces feel transformed by sacred purpose. The flickering flames cast dancing shadows that bring frescoed figures to life, while the warm glow creates intimate gathering spaces where multiple generations share stories that connect current prosperity to ancestral wisdom and divine favor. Roman celebrations understood that the past, present, and future must all be honored if abundance is to continue flowing through family lines. The festival's culmination involves offerings that demonstrate the household's prosperity while acknowledging their dependence on forces beyond human control. Wine poured onto the altar steams in the cool night air, bread crumbles into pieces that will feed both gods and birds, and incense creates aromatic clouds that carry prayers upward towards celestial recipients who hopefully appreciate both the thought and the expensive frankincense. You'd probably spend more on a single restaurant meal than Romans invested in these elaborate offerings that secured divine favor for entire households. The winter preparation rituals that follow the harvest celebration demonstrate Roman practicality at its most forward-thinking, with household members preserving foods, checking equipment, and making plans that will sustain the villa through months when fresh abundance gives way to careful management of stored resources. Romans understood that successful celebration required successful planning, that gratitude for current prosperity must be balanced with preparation for future challenges. What strikes you most about these seasonal festivals is how they integrate religious obligation, family tradition, community celebration, and practical preparation into seamless experiences that honor both divine favor and human effort. The villa's inhabitants don't just consume abundance. They celebrate it, preserve it, and plan for its continuation through rituals that acknowledge both human skill and cosmic generosity. As the festival concludes and the villa settles into the quieter rhythms of winter preparation, you realize you've witnessed something that modern life has largely lost. The understanding that prosperity requires not just individual effort, but community celebration, divine favor, and the kind of grateful attention to seasonal cycles that makes abundance feel earned rather than simply expected, blessed rather than merely convenient. You settle into the villa's deepest twilight hours as the ancient world prepares for sleep, where time moves with the gentle inevitability of tides, and the only sounds are the soft whispers of wind through olive branches and the distant murmur of fountains that have been singing the same lullaby for centuries. The villa breathes around you with the rhythm of a household at perfect peace, where every soul, from the paterfamilias to the newest kitchen slave, has found their place in the gentle choreography of ending another day in paradise, Roman style. The oil lamps burn lower now, their flames reduced to soft glows that transform the villa's frescoed walls into dreamscapes where painted gardens seem to sway in evening breezes that exist only in artistic imagination. The light is golden, warm, forgiving, the kind of illumination that makes even ordinary faces look touched by divine favor and turns simple domestic spaces into settings worthy of poetry. Romans understood that the transition from consciousness to sleep deserved atmospheric support, that the last things you see should prepare your mind for pleasant dreams rather than anxious rumination. In the master bedroom, the household's most precious possessions rest in wooden chests that smell of cedar and lavender, their contents representing not just material wealth, but generations of accumulated memories. Each piece carrying stories that will be passed down through family lines until the empire itself becomes nothing more than romantic ruin. The jewelry, the fine textiles, the carefully preserved documents, all of it speaks to Roman understanding that true riches consist not in individual accumulation, but in the preservation of beauty, wisdom, and tradition for those who will follow. The villa's children have already drifted into sleep in chambers decorated with frescoes of protective deities and favorite mythological scenes, their small bodies curled beneath woolen covers that were woven by hands that loved them, dyed with colors that will fade long before the memories of childhood security in spaces designed to nurture rather than merely shelter. You realize that Roman children slept with a security modern kids can barely imagine. Surrounded by extended family, protected by household gods, embedded in communities that considered their well-being a collective responsibility. The kitchen fires bank to glowing embers that will keep the bread ovens warm through the night, ready to begin tomorrow's cycle of nourishment and comfort with the kind of seamless continuity that makes each day feel like a natural extension of the one before rather than a jarring interruption of peaceful rest. Roman domestic life flowed like water, finding its own level, adapting to obstacles, always moving toward the next natural rhythm without the artificial urgency that characterizes modern existence. The peristyle garden settles into nocturnal beauty, where moonlight transforms familiar plants into mysterious shapes that seem to guard the villa's sleep with benevolent attention. Night-blooming flowers release fragrances that would make modern aromatherapy enthusiasts weep with envy, creating natural perfumes that drift through open windows to scent dreams with the essence of Mediterranean herbs and the promise of another golden day approaching with the inevitability of sunrise. Historians still debate whether Romans consciously designed their gardens for nocturnal beauty, but breathing this perfumed air, you suspect they understood that sleep deserves its own aesthetic considerations. The household gods rest in their shrines, their day's offerings consumed or removed, their protective presence a gentle constant that requires no conscious attention, yet provides the deep security that comes from knowing you're watched over by forces that genuinely care about your well-being. The Laras and Penates don't sleep. They maintain their vigil through the dark hours, ensuring that tomorrow will arrive with the same blessed abundance that characterized today, that the villa's peace will remain unbroken by the kind of cosmic indifference that keeps modern people staring at ceilings instead of drifting into restorative dreams. As midnight approaches, the villa achieves a perfect stillness that speaks to the Roman genius for creating harmony between human needs and natural rhythms, where architecture, agriculture, spirituality, and social organization all conspire to support the fundamental human requirement for peaceful rest in secure surroundings. The silence isn't empty. It's full of potential, pregnant with the dreams that will carry villa inhabitants through the dark hours toward another day of civilized living in spaces designed to nurture human flourishing. The very air seems to carry the accumulated contentment of generations who understood that true luxury consisted not in exotic possessions or theatrical displays of wealth, but in the simple ability to end each day with gratitude, surrounded by beauty, protected by love, confident that tomorrow would bring its own opportunities for meaningful work, genuine pleasure, and the kind of deep satisfaction that comes from living according to principles that honor both individual dignity and collective responsibility. You find yourself breathing more slowly, your heartbeat matching the villa's peaceful rhythm, your thoughts beginning to drift toward the kind of restorative sleep that comes only when mind and body both recognize themselves to be in exactly the right place at exactly the right time. The villa wraps around you like a warm embrace, its stones still holding the day's sunshine, its fountains still singing their ancient songs, its very walls seeming to whisper that all is well, has always been well, will continue to be well in this perfect pocket of human civilization carved from the eternal landscape of Mediterranean hills. Sleep comes naturally here, without effort or anxiety, as inevitable as sunrise and just as blessed. The villa dreams with you, its ancient peace flowing into your modern restlessness, transforming it into the kind of profound rest that heals both body and soul. In this timeless space where Romans once closed their eyes in perfect security, you too surrender to sleep, carried into dreams by the gentle certainty that some things, beauty, comfort, love, and the deep human need for peaceful rest, remain constant across all the centuries that separate your world from theirs, creating a bridge of shared humanity that makes this ancient villa feel like the home you never knew you'd been searching for all along. The villa settles deeper into its eternal rest. The fountains whisper their ancient songs. The olive trees sway in moonlight that has blessed these hills for millennia. And you drift away, carried by the same gentle rhythms that have soothed countless souls in this perfect sanctuary where time moves like honey, dreams taste like nectar, and sleep comes as naturally as breathing, as inevitable as the dawn that will rise tomorrow over these blessed stones. This eternal peace, this timeless sanctuary where ancient tranquility becomes your own, where Roman dreams become your dreams, with a past and present merge in perfect rest. Sleep well, sleep deeply. Let the villa hold you in its ancient embrace. Let the centuries of peace flow through your modern soul. Let the gentle wisdom of forgotten lives become your lullaby as you join the eternal rest of those who truly knew the art of living beautifully and sleeping peacefully in harmony with time itself. Good night, sweet dreams. May you wake refreshed in a world made brighter by the memory of ancient peace that lives on in the stones and the dreams in the eternal twilight of Villa Serenitas,